In this video, I discuss the truth, fact-based and data-driven about where retirees actually spend their money. How do you compare? Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
I don't know about you, but when I was a child, I envisioned retirement as this exotic, fun-filled adventure that people engaged in endlessly from the time they retired onward. Why did I feel this way? Because my grandmother was the model. And I saw her traveling. I saw her doing a lot of really cool things. And at 8 years old, you don't realize that this isn't happening all of the time. As I matured, I realized that people didn't really live like that. And grandma would come visit once every 4 or 5 years. My dad was in the military. One was in Hawaii, which was really cool. But the point was that she didn't travel all of the time. But the only time I saw her was when she was traveling. What was really happening, in fact, was a well-planned, well-budgeted, once-in-a-while trip that happened every 4 or 5, 10 years sometimes. But to an 8-year-old boy, that looked like something that people do all of the time in retirement. What my grandmother had, and she was a master of, is she had a very close relationship with her family, like a lot of grandmothers do. She loved her family, and it came through in so many ways. When I lived in Hawaii, she brought a wooden tiki god. It probably cost all of about $3, but I still have that little wooden tiki god today. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, we human beings are both wonderful and flawed at the same time. The reason is that our brain didn't come with an owner's manual, so in the absence of very specific data-driven information, we make things up. One of those things is that we believe that people did a better job of preparing for retirement than us. Now, I can tell you if you're watching a video like this is probably not true about you because people who don't prepare for retirement don't watch videos about retirement, generally speaking anyway. So here in this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you to the dollar how the average retiree spends their money. All right, let's go. Gang, Medicare can be confusing. It can be overwhelming. If you talk to the average 65-year-old out there, they'll tell you this is true. Even after hours of research, they often end up in the wrong plan, costing them hundreds of dollars a year in costs. Keeping track of enrollment periods, understanding all of your plan options, and making sure you're on the right plan every single year takes a lot of time and energy. On this channel, we have only 3 affiliate relationships. One is our trusted Medicare partner, Chapter. Chapter is the only national advisor that recommends every plan and saves their clients an average of $1,100 per year. They're very easy to work with, and they're totally free to you. If this is of interest to you, give them a call at 440-703-1224 to see if they can help. Those of you who are in or near retirement actually have a huge advantage over younger generations. You were part of the last generation to actually balance your checkbook. Now you're probably thinking something like, what's Jeff talking about? What's that have to do with anything? Aren't there spreadsheets that do all of this now? Yes, there are, and I'm a big believer in spreadsheets, but think about the actual act of balancing your checkbook. You had to actually write checks, which forced you to do 2 things. The first was to slow down your purchases. It wasn't just a swipe. You actually had to stop, write a check, and think about what you were buying. You also had to think about how much money was in your account and how much money was going to be in your account after you wrote that check. You had to think about your bills. Now, I will also tell you that 95% plus of people out there don't write checks on a daily basis. Why? Because of credit cards, ATMs, debit cards, all of the aspects of life that make transactions faster and easier are right in front of you. But fortunately, that one skill that is embedded in us is the act of slowing down and thinking about what you're buying. This also means that we checkbook balancers are pretty consistent about how we spend our money. And that is the subject of the next part of this video. So how does the retirement community spend its money? Well, you can probably guess the categories, but you might get the balance wrong. Now let's look at the data source that we're going to use here, because for most people, when they look at the data source, the number one question is, can I trust this data? Because there's a lot of bad data out there. The one that we're going to use for this video is a really good one. It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey. The BLS is one of the most accurate data providers in the world. This is the same group that provides the unemployment rate, the Consumer Price Index, which is used to calculate COLA, and a whole host of other data that we use in day-to-day life. If you want to look at what's happening economically with the U.S. population, there's a good chance the BLS survey will have what you're looking for. Now, the data we're going to look at is by household, not by person, and the BLS survey says that the average retirement household spends $60,087 per year. The reason that this distinction is important is that most expenses aren't doubled if two people live in a household versus one. Think about rent, for example. If you live in a one-bedroom apartment and two people live in that apartment, the rent doesn't double simply because there are two people there. There's one home, one heating bill, often one car, one insurance payment. You get the point. Where it becomes duplicative are on things like food and clothing, consumption items basically, things that you don't split with somebody else. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the 5 areas where people spend 80% of their income are housing, transportation, healthcare, food, and entertainment. Let's start off with housing. The average household spends $21,445 per year. This includes things like utilities. If you rent, it includes your rent. If you have a mortgage, it includes your mortgage. Anything that is used to maintain your home in its current condition falls into the category of housing. This is the biggest spend category by far, and one thing is certain about this category. Viewers will be split on whether this represents them or not. Why? Because 40% of people going into retirement enter retirement with a mortgage. If you don't have a mortgage, this number will seem a little high. If you have a mortgage, this number might seem small. Also, if you rent, this number might seem too small. Out of all of the categories we're going to talk about, this one is going to be the most variable because people have different situations. Next up, transportation. The average retirement household spends $9,033 per year on transportation. This includes a car, insurance, public transportation, anything you use to get around. Now, for the vast majority of retirees, this means a car. And the reason is because in retirement, being independent is one of the most important things to a retiree, particularly in late-stage retirement. So giving up a car is unlikely for most retirees. The next up is healthcare. Now, I will tell you that this is the one that most people get wrong. Most people think it's actually higher. And the data out there is quite varied. Some reports say that the average household spends between $170,000 and $180,000. Others, like Fidelity, say it's more like $325,000, $350,000. But according to the BLS, the average household spends $8,027 per year, or $200,000 over a 25-year period. And none of these estimates, by the way, include long-term care. And frankly, long-term care is invisible to a lot of retirees. Why? Because it's expensive and they don't have it. But it's important to note that only 15% of retirees have long-term care insurance, but 70% of retirees experience or need some form of long-term care during their lifetime. A large portion of this number is medical insurance. That's Medicare, a Medigap plan or a Medicare Advantage plan, a Part D prescription drug plan, deductibles, and coinsurance. Next up is food. The average retirement household spends $7,714 per year. That's basically comprised of groceries and restaurants. This is often a throwaway category because people don't view eating in the same way that they do entertainment. It's not exciting, but yet it is supremely important for the well-being of the retiree, not just because of nutrition, but because the actual social act of going out and having dinner at a restaurant. Retirement can isolate people, particularly in late-stage retirement. All you need to do is look at Gene Hackman to know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, he had advanced Alzheimer's disease, but given the fact pattern, he was also completely isolated. Getting out and being around people is so important to the mental health of a retiree, and frankly, this category, in my mind, could have been higher because it's something that people actually need. It's more than an option, it's a necessity for the well-being of the retiree. If you can't regularly afford restaurant food, find other ways to get together over a meal. Family dinners, potluck dinners with neighbors. You can find a lot of ways to get in front of other people and have a meal with them, or at least be out there and have a meal while you people watch. The next big category is entertainment, and this is $2,898 per year. This includes things like movies, a play, a few rounds of golf, I suppose. You name it. This is about having fun. This is also one I would have thought would be higher. To be candid, it might actually be higher because there's another $10,972 that falls into what I would consider to be miscellaneous buckets. We'll talk about those in just a moment. Entertainment seems to be a category that should be optional, but I don't believe it's optional. Think about this. The average retiree spent 40 years doing for other people, often raising a family, certainly working hard to put themselves in a position where they could actually enjoy themselves a bit in retirement, and now they're in retirement, and it's time. For many retirees, this takes a little while, though, because they spent 40 years shortcutting things in their life to make things happen in other people's lives. The good news is that a lot of retirees, once they've accepted the fact that they're in retirement, report back and say that they've lost weight, they're mentally free, they just feel good about where they are in the world today. The above expenditures represent 80% of the average retiree spending, and frankly, most, if not virtually all retirees spend in these categories. The next categories may or may not apply to you, but it's important to note. One of the categories, it's an unusual category. It's called personal insurance and pensions. That's $3,277. Personal insurance means things like life insurance or annuities or investments that look like life insurance, but they're not. It also means non-employer long-term disability insurance and long-term care insurance. Pensions refer to contributing to a retirement account. And most retirees, when they go into retirement, they stop contributing to a retirement account, and instead they start drawing down on a retirement account, or they just leave it if they have cash flow from other sources. But if they are contributing, it might be excess cash, a part-time job, investment returns that they're not using. The next category is cash contributions, and that's $3,132 on average. And these are payments to people or institutions outside of the home, children, friends, charitable contributions, things like that. Next up, apparel. This refers to clothes, and this amount is $1,287 per year. The last two categories sound like they're the same thing, but they're not. The categories are miscellaneous and other. Miscellaneous refers to one-off expenditures. That's $1,052. These are things that you're not planning on spending money on again. Think about things like lump sum payments, one-off reimbursements, irregular fees. Those would fall under the category of miscellaneous. The other category refers to things that are recurring, but they weren't captured in one of the categories above. That's $2,222. This refers to things that just didn't map cleanly to the categories above, or the interviewer didn't get the information right, and so it became a cleanup item. There are a lot of reasons that it ends up in the other category, but oftentimes it ends up in the other category, but it really does belong in the first 5 categories that we talked about. If you like this video, check out that video. Retirees don't pay cash for your next car. Here's why. Also, if you have questions about Medicare, don't forget to call our partner chapter at 440-703-1224 to see if they can help. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.